Hello everyone, today I'll be reviewing The Terminator. So The Terminator came out in 1984 and was directed by James Cameron, and this is a science fiction film. So we start off with this character called Sarah Connor, who is played by Linda Hamilton in the year 1984, and she's a waitress. But all of a sudden she realises that two other people called Sarah Connor have recently been murdered, so she starts to worry for herself. She realises that she's being chased by this character known as the Terminator, who is played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he has been sent back in time from the year 2029 to the year 1984 in order to kill Sarah Connor, because Sarah Connor's future son, John Connor, is part of the resistance against the Terminators in this war in the future. We also have this character called Kyle Reese, who has also been sent back from the year 2029, but he's been sent back to protect Sarah and, well, to protect her from this Terminator played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. So throughout this film we're really following Sarah and Kyle as they are trying to outrun and eventually destroy this cybernetic Terminator played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. So this film has really gone down as a classic and a real science fiction classic, and it was actually quite surprising. It didn't actually do quite as well at the box office as I first thought when I sort of looked at the figures, and it was amazing how low the budget was for this film originally. It certainly didn't have a massive budget for the time, but still, I still think this film actually holds up very well. It's still very entertaining and still a very exciting film. And in terms of the plot, it's actually non-stop action. It goes from one scene to the next. Of course, it does slow down a few times, but that completely feels necessary for this film because it then ramps up the tension and gets us excited for the next big action scene which is about to take place. This film certainly helped make Arnold Schwarzenegger a megastar, and obviously in years after this, particularly in the 80s and early 90s, Arnold Schwarzenegger would go on to be in lots of these big action films like Commando, Predator, and obviously Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and he's really become one of those actors which has become synonymous with this big action star, these big movie action star types with people like Bruce Willis and Sylvester Stallone and Jean-Claude Van Damme. Just really fits nicely into these groups of actors who went on to be in these over-the-top explosive action films. And what's interesting is that in this film, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he really doesn't have that many lines at all. Obviously he's playing a robot, so he really only speaks when he has to. Most of the time he's just walking around looking angry, shooting at people or shooting things, and it just gives his character a real robotic and emotionless feel, which is obviously how we're supposed to feel towards him because he is the villain in this film and, you know, we're not supposed to like him. Linda Hamilton also does an excellent job as playing Sarah Connor. She really is the main character in this film, and when she meets Kyle Reese as well, their relationship becomes very interesting later on. And it's interesting to see that Kyle Reese, the character, he also is quite unemotional as well, and he actually only smiles once throughout this whole film, but his character is obviously sent back in time in order to do a mission. So this film doesn't really stop for any sort of relaxation or anything. It's constant on the edge of your seat stuff. It's one chase scene and one action scene after the next, and I absolutely love it. So in terms of the special effects, I actually think most of them do hold up very well, which is actually quite surprising given the low budget of this film and the fact that this film is obviously from the 1980s. There are some scenes in particular which actually use stop motion animation, particularly on Arnold Schwarzenegger's face when he has his eye taken out and he has an empty eye socket, and then later on when he is stripped of his skin and just becomes a robot. And although these effects can look quite dated, it certainly gives it quite a lot of character and often does make it look very creepy indeed. And it often reminded me of, seeing some films like Jason and the Argonauts and Clash of the Titans, but, most of the time it is just Arnold Schwarzenegger doing the movements, which obviously looks absolutely brilliant. This film has a very dark and dingy look to it. Almost all the time it seems to be at night or in the evening where it's really dark and murky, and it also seems reminiscent of these 1940s film noirs with these detectives in these misty cities, and it just helps give that film a really dark and mysterious look, and it just makes us feel as though danger and mystery is lurking in the air and that something is about to go wrong and that evil things are about to take place, which certainly links in with the theme of this film. I also really like the music in this film. That opening sequence is absolutely fantastic, and in fact the opening sequence in this film is actually, it starts off in the future in Los Angeles 2029, and we get these big machines which are firing guns at each other, and I was really surprised to know that they actually used miniatures for this scene because it actually looks very realistic. It looks a very well done scene. Obviously it does help that everything's very dark, but even with the gunfire and everything, it still holds up today very well. I was very surprised and very impressed by it, and again it's even more impressive the fact that the film was on such low budget. So obviously, as I mentioned earlier, this film has had a sequel, and actually I say sequel, it's had lots of other sequels and become one of those big movie franchises. I think Terminator 2 Judgment Day is also an excellent film, possibly even better than this one. Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines, a good film, but nowhere near as good as this one. And then there have been some other sequels like Terminator Salvation, Terminator Genesis, and Dark Fate as well, at the time I'm recording this anyway. And I actually haven't seen the two most recent sequels, though I heard that they're not as good as the original ones, but perhaps I'll watch them myself, and that way I can make up my mind up whether I like them or not. So overall, I think The Terminator, it's an absolute classic. It's a fantastic action film, it's a fantastic science fiction film, and it's one of those films that really does everything that you expect. I can't necessarily think of anything particularly bad about it, in terms of obviously it being a bit of an older film now, so obviously some of the special effects, particularly with some of the stop motion animation, does look a bit dated and may well put quite a lot of modern audiences off of it and might make them cringe slightly when watching it. But then again, you have to respect the film for the time, and actually I think in terms of the rest of the special effects, I think they do hold up very well indeed. So I'm going to give The Terminator a rating of 9 out of 10. One of the greatest action films, a very iconic movie, and it's worth watching just for Arnold Schwarzenegger's iconic line, "I'll be back," which obviously when he said it, he never knew it would go down in history to become such an iconic line, but it's often just in Arnie's delivery which really makes it entertaining. So there we go, so that is my review of The Terminator. So what do you guys think? Have you seen The Terminator? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Please let me know down in the comment section what your thoughts are. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.